Amy Warke, thank you so much for joining us, and you are the superintendent of LaGrange Highlands District 106, and so much has been going on, as everyone knows, in education. We wanted to catch up with you and kind of find out what's going. You know, we hear so much right now about the governor, which the Illinois Channel carries every day, and I've been talking to some other people who are wanting to reopen the economy. We tend not to hear, and kind of been under the rug, so to speak, swept under the rug, what's happening in education. So hopefully we can educate myself as well as some of the other people about how are the schools faring right now, and probably what is the weirdest school year in the last 100 years. So the first basic question, are you actually educating now, or are the schools closed down?
We are educating students now. That is something that I think everyone across the state of Illinois in education, we're very proud of. All of the teachers and administrators and superintendents have shown exactly how much we are really doing for children right now. A lot of us did not have remote learning programs prior to COVID, and we are now doing remote learning in many different ways. For example, in my district on February 28th, we did not have a remote learning program. And in 2 weeks, we were able to put together a program because we did have the infrastructure. We had a one-to-one program and had that program in second grade through eighth grade. We were able to work with our teachers, work with our students, and get feedback as to how to make that learning work in our students' homes. We were able to continue the curriculum that the children were working on in those early days of March as they were learning in our schools at that time. So it was no easy feat, but we did it.
Yeah, I was going to say your tech people deserve a lot of credit for putting this together. And how long has it been that the students have been out of the school? You're coming to us actually from the school. You're in
Yes.
your office. I imagine there's only a handful of people actually working at the school these days. Basically, you probably got tumbleweed going down the hallways, right? I mean,
We
it's a
do.
ghost town.
It is. It's a ghost town. It's a very lonely place. And right now it is myself and some custodians. And I actually have someone manning the main office right now because we are serving lunch for students and families to pick up. So
They pick up. Okay, so.
yes, they pick it up in the sense that we are one site. We have an elementary school and a middle school and a district office, and we are all on one site. So the place where our families pick up the lunch is at our district office. So our families come to our site and pick up the lunch there. We are offering a sack lunch, and our families pick that up on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So our primary purpose for having that main office open is for our families to pick up that lunch and have that source for food.
So you're teaching right now. How are the teachers teaching? And by that, part of what I mean by that is, are they operating from their home, or do they come into the school to use the technology? It's all online, I imagine. I was telling you off camera yesterday when we were preparing for this. I tripped over. There's a teacher. I believe he's in Illinois. You don't even know, but he was a history teacher, and I really enjoyed listening to his lecture. He was talking about the Civil War chapter, and it was fascinating. And he did an excellent job. In this case, editing in photos from the Civil War battles as well as he spoke. Is that more or less, and then he recorded it and then would post it somewhere, and I presumed from watching this that his students would know where to go for that link, or maybe he emailed it to them. Can you walk us through, are the teachers using their own equipment? Maybe, just maybe they don't necessarily have the equipment they need. Does the school provide it? What's all involved in making this happen? And before I let you speak, I mean, how amazing is this? Everyone's flying by the seat of their pants. No one had hey, let's have a COVID plan. So in a few short weeks, and this is, I guess, through extrapolation, we can imagine it's happening across the nation. So which why I find all of this so fascinating. It's just isn't this quaint they're learning from home. It's how did you make this all happen in such a short amount of time? And then why don't we, after you kind of tell us all that, I'd be interested to find out how, if in any way, are you measuring whether kids are logging in, are they learning, are they being tested? Take us through all of that.
Oh my word, those are all such great questions. And I also just have to do, a shout out not only to all of my teachers and staff, but to every educator across the state of Illinois. It does not matter what district, every teacher has changed their practice on a dime. And I can describe what the instruction is looking like for our teachers and how our teachers did it. And I know just from speaking to other superintendents that a lot of the instruction looks similar in their situations as well. What we did as far as some of that instruction, we are using the platform Zoom. There are other platforms like Google Hangout, and we are also using our platform of Schoology and Seesaw. Our students are then using other apps like Flipgrid. They are recording themselves and sending assignments back. One of the main things that we are finding during this time is craving connections. We are missing our students, as I said, and you might have mentioned, there are tumbleweeds in the hall. No one has been in our building for 8 weeks. Our doors have been closed. The favorite part of my job is walking in the hallways, seeing the students walk in pairs to the office, delivering things from classrooms, from teachers, or picking up items that they've forgotten. And none of that is happening here. That's the life of our school. And now the way that students are able to connect with their teacher is in a Zoom classroom meeting. The teachers are, in some cases, recording themselves doing a lesson, sending that out to the children. The children are watching that, doing whatever work is necessary. And then when they come back together on a class meeting, they're then discussing that work that they did. That's one avenue of doing that. Some of the other things that we're doing here with our instruction is we've started project-based learning projects for the students where they have some choice in some of the projects that they are doing. And then our teachers are giving feedback to those students as to how to improve those projects. The students are reflecting on their learning, and others are providing feedback. Peers are providing feedback to the students as well. So we are able to work with learning in that manner. Something that's been interesting is all of us have gone to school, all of us have experienced learning, but really working with how does someone learn and using that component of learning to actually determine if learning is occurring. Does that make sense?
Yes. In fact, that's what my question was again. How are you measuring or knowing? So if it's a Zoom class, then they can see presumably the student's face, the teacher could, do you have, as I kind of mentioned earlier, do you have some teachers that are recording maybe a lecture and putting it up? And having them
Yes.
watch, and then can you see that Billy and Sally clicked in and watched it, and maybe Sally only watched 4 minutes of a half an hour, but Billy watched all of it? Can you measure that kind of connectivity?
So, so last Friday, I was in one of our third grade sessions, and they were discussing symmetry at the beginning of their Zoom call meeting. And so the teacher was at the point in time reviewing some of the components of the lesson that the students were talking about. And the students were showing different lines of symmetry and things that they had found in their home. And the teacher was showing different objects, and they were talking about the different lines of symmetry. So that was part of the review that they had completed after they had watched the information about lines of symmetry. And then they moved into different components of their project-based learning, and it was regarding making a thermometer. And so it was interesting then hearing the students talk about the research that they had completed and different aspects that they needed to take into consideration for measurement, different components that needed to go in order to figure out how to take temperature. So lots of different learning is happening. There are research skills, there are writing skills. So very
I would think the
different.
writing would be maybe easier because they can do it, whatever, and email it, right? And then if it's an English
Absolutely.
lesson or something like that. Are
Absolutely.
there some things that you find, speaking of that, some education, subject matter works well, like maybe an English class, but other things like a science or math or something, do you find that some subjects are easier to teach online than others?
Oh, absolutely. It is, I would say math is probably one of the easier subjects to teach online and with the blended and remote learning environment. Reading is actually one of the harder ones to teach in the sense that in the lower grades, when students are still learning how to learn, that is very hard to teach unless you're figuring out in a one-to-one or a small group environment. There are lots of programs out there where students can listen to a book, read a book online, record themselves, and teachers can then listen to that recording and take some measurements or diagnostics on how the students are reading. So that type of software is helpful to us in order to measure the students' learning, but not everyone has access to some of those programs.
Yeah, there's so many things here. I don't want to make this into a 3-hour interview, but there's so many things to
It
cover.
easily could be.
Yeah, I mean, part of the other issue is, I'm kind of curious. Let's talk about just some of the technology, and by that I mean, have you talked to other schools, and to what extent you were fortunate, you were lucky, you had a good tech people on there, you pulled this off, and congratulations to you and your team and your teachers. What about the kids that maybe don't have the technology at home? What about if you, to the extent that we can maybe talk a little bit beyond LaGrange, Highland, have you compared notes with other superintendents or other educators, and what has their experience been, if you can relate it to us?
Oh, absolutely. And actually, some of my colleagues that really are just 10 miles north of here, they're having quite a different experience than we are. We have approximately 97% of our students logging on and participating in our lessons and in all of the activities that we are doing online. Uh, 10 miles north of here, that is not the case. Some of my colleagues have not had 50% of their students. So we went out on March 16th, some went out on March 17th, and they have not seen up to 50% of their children since that time. So when you're talking about learning loss, we're going to be talking about much different levels of learning loss between even what students within my district may be experiencing versus students who have not had opportunities since March 16th or 17th.
Is that because, would you say, is it technical connections? Is it social? Is it cultural? What is the? I mean, not, not everyone's from. You might have one mother who's a stay-at-home mother helping the child learn. You might have another child who both parents are working, perhaps. Whatever. I mean, in other words, not all families are created equal, and not all households are equally connected. So that's all part of this. What is an unplanned but vast social experiment in education? It's kind of like we just said, hey, everyone, let's, not only are we doing it, but we did it without any preparation beforehand.
Right. And I think that you've just hit on equity across the state of Illinois, access and opportunity to internet access, to devices, to whether you have parents in the home who are working, parents who can support learning. We might have language barriers in helping students have access to work on and help with that work. So there are a number of factors that can impact a child's ability to access the work remotely. There are districts who do not have the funds to have the one-to-one program like we do here at Highlands. Having said that, if you do not have the funds nor the infrastructure to turn around a program like we did in 2 weeks, that also can impact the opportunity that students and teachers have to deliver the education to children.
I don't want to be meaning this in a critical way. As we said, and as everyone already knows, this was thrust upon everyone. But how would you assess the level? Would you say you're able to teach at 50% of the normal level, 75%? I presume you're not going to say this is better than it was before. So, given the circumstances in your district, and by the way, I presume this is a K-12 district, right? I mean, so
we're a K-8.
K-8, okay.
Yes.
So how would you assess the success of this on a percentage basis of 100% being what you were doing prior to the shutdown?
You know what? That's a great question. And nothing will ever replace having a child in front of you and the ability to make that connection, see the body language, actually really see when you have the opportunity to see that light bulb moment and see if that connection was made and you're knowing that learning is occurring. I don't think there will ever be anything that can replace that, especially in a K-8 environment. Having said that, I think not only here in LaGrange Highlands, but again, I really feel across the state of Illinois, every educator has really been doing a phenomenal job with remote learning. There are so many examples of librarians and media specialists putting virtual books out for our students to read. There are teachers who are recording the lessons for the children to be able to watch it not only once, but maybe 3 or 4 or 5 times, however long it takes them to really get and learn that concept. So there are also benefits to this opportunity for remote learning. So what are some things that we as an education system can learn from not having all of the learning in front of us? So when you ask what is the cost benefit, I guess, of remote learning, I think that there are some things as far as what are some reforms in education that we can look at and learn from with having the rug pulled out from under us.
I started to say what we've learned. I've covered a number of education issues over the years, and one of the ones, and I'm almost wondering here, I guess I'm looking, are there any nuggets where you could say, we didn't anticipate this, but this one aspect is an advantage. And, part of it might be, as one example, if no one saw the COVID thing, and hopefully it never happens again, but we will have snow days. And
Right.
this is something where you might have, okay, we go to plan B, and what you're doing right now is plan B, and the kids have already gone through the drill, and even if it's, 5 years or 10 years from now, and you got different students, hopefully if you still have you or the teachers on board, or you could prepare for that, maybe we won't have snow day just be an entire day off. But that it could still be where you pick up, you're just doing it online. We also have obviously emerging technology with not only artificial intelligence, but the virtual reality. And that's all going to be part of this brave new world. And to that extent, that we get teachers, educators, even yourself, the superintendents, kind of going through the drill of educating and dealing with this. Let's talk just from your own thought process of what long-term results will we have from this, do you imagine, or if any occur to you, whether good or bad? Or maybe you might want to include in your answer, if I'm talking, testifying before a House Committee on Education, what would you say to lawmakers about funding of technology, having whatever you need, what resources, include all of that? Because this is, I think, something that's important for us while it's in our minds, while we're going through this. 6 months, a year from now, as I often say, it's one thing to understand conceptually what cold is, it's something else to be standing out in the cold. And right now we're standing out in the cold, and all these experiences, we're feeling it right now. We're going through it right now, and I think it's very important to record our recollections as they are occurring, and to share that before we forget the experiences and we're back to normal, so to speak.
Right. And I think the main thing is really funding for schools. Students and education really is the foundation for democracy. And that is truly the way that education really truly is the platform that leads to every other occupation that exists. And having the ability to educate students really boils down to funds and funding. And as we know, Illinois just worked with the evidence-based funding model, and we know that right now COVID has taken a really huge hit on the economy, and right now schools are looking at planning a budget for the next 2 to 3 years with a minimum of a 10% or a 15% cut across the board, because we know that the education budget is going to be cut. And how do you then educate students when we were working with a formula that was working to bring everyone up to a standard level? And having then said that, we were just talking about connectivity. Students might not have access to a device. Students might not have opportunities to eat. So there are so many things that it all circles back to finance and funding, and how do we work with adequately funding the schools so that we can educate the children.
I don't want to get you in trouble by asking an awkward question, but so I think you're right. I think the state will very likely, I mean, they'll be forced to cut the education budget. Not that they're wanting to do that, but the governor's talking, and frankly, the governor's at this point guessing that the revenues coming into the state are going to be probably down by $5 billion or so. Education is one of the, I forget if it's number one, but it's right up there as far as one of the main expenses of the state. So obviously they're going to have to cut budgets, and education won't be escaping from that. Has there been any discussion along the lines of how do we cut at a district level? And I mean, you're going to be talking about your district, and another superintendent will be talking about theirs. I don't know though, when we have the teachers, and this is something I should know and I don't, does your district have a contract with your teachers, or is it, you know, we think of the IFT, the Illinois Federation of Teachers, the IEA. I don't know, are those contracts individual to the district, or are they statewide?
That's a great question.
And if it's per district, I mean, that's something, again, we who are not in education, we kind of gloss over some of the things and we don't even stop to think about it. If it's by district, are you having any conversations at this point with, you know, the teachers and going, hey, you know, what can you guys do? Because we know we're going to have to start cutting expenses.
That's like a really great question. And every district does have their own collective bargaining agreement with their teachers association. And so that is going to be conversations, I think, that every superintendent and union will be looking at and thinking about and considering. The agreement with the union and the collective bargaining agreement is with the Board of Education and the Teachers Association, and you know, looking forward, that is going to be something that I think everyone will be considering and having some discussions about, because as you know, education is a human business. We employ people to educate children, and that is where the majority of our costs are. Most budgets for schools are 70 to 80% in salary and benefits. And so in order for schools to really work with any cost saving measures, it's in the human capital area.
So at this point, it's what's so weird is that you're in school, but there's no students at the school as we're accustomed to. When does the school year stop for you?
Our last day is actually June 1st.
Okay.
So that will be our last day.
And so at that point, your teachers are free to have a summer and whatever, and the kids are free to have their summer.
Correct, whatever that will look like.
And then at what point do you start the new school year?
So right now, our calendar tentatively would begin on August 19th. And our teachers would tentatively come back for our Institute Days on August 17th and 18th. And so, you know, we're awaiting, like everyone else, to really learn what is next year going to look like. So we're planning for 3 different scenarios to come back. The best hope would be that we could come back and learn like normal. We're planning for a hybrid model of some students on site, social distancing, following some of the recommendations from the CDC, and that's loosely being planned out we haven't received any guidance from the state yet, but we're looking for that to be coming soon. And our third one would be to further out our remote learning plan and really continue to hone in on that and really figure out how could we really make remote learning work better than it is now.
When we look at this, I suppose, are there any that occur to you? Are there any long-term changes that you anticipate will come from this?
That's a really, really good question. I do think some long-term changes for education are really going to be having us really look at how does learning, actually take place, and how do we assess learning, and what does that really look like? So I think that those are going to be some conversations that we'll need to get into as a system to really measure learning and determine, is it all about the standardized test, or are there other ways that we can really look at students' learning, their ability to learn, and measure that learning?
Well, Amy, there's so much unknown here, and we appreciate you being as forthcoming as you can be, to the extent that you can only look into the future for so much. Do you, I guess as far as obvious other things like gym and all, the kids are just, going to have to go out and play in their backyard and be satisfied with that. So at least you're not dealing with some of the other high schools would be dealing with, as far as, what the football team and all that, and then they're going to have to be coming back and practicing and earlier than the rest of the kids. And of course, now we don't know if they can be having football practice, or if there will be. There's so much unknown in the society at this point. I do think it's good probably for all of us to kind of record what it is we're going through. This will be a major chapter in American history, just as World War II was. And people now, we ask, how weird was it for you to go and buy gas with the rationing coupons? And that always, for those of us who didn't go through that, we look at it secondhand. People, I think, in years to come will be asking us the same kind of questions. How did you guys deal with it? And by the same token, I think we'll be able to see in 10 years from now how this chapter in American history permanently changed the country in some ways that we didn't anticipate. So I could ask another 50 questions of you. I won't do that right now. I'll let you go. But so good of you to join us on the Illinois Channel, and we hope we can revisit. We'd like to find out as we go forward, again, how are the kids doing, and maybe even, by the way, are you asking any of the students? Are you finding from them how they're enjoying or not enjoying the experience?
Yes, that's a great question. So we've actually sent out surveys. We've already done 2 surveys, and we will do a 3rd survey at the end of May. And we will survey, again, our students, our parents, and our teachers. So that's one way we're trying to track and measure, and then also actually even adjust some of the things that we're doing, because that feedback and that partnership with our teachers, our students, and our parents is really valuable and really helps inform everything that we're doing. And we cannot do it alone. And all of them really help inform everything that we're doing. So we will have data from the students, we will have data from the teachers, and we'll have additional data from the parents that will continue to help inform what we will do, and then really truly help us improve and plan for next year.
Well, as we said, and everyone knows, this is congratulations again to you, and just frankly everyone who's out there keeping the society glued together as we go through this vast unplanned experiment and making it work, sometimes with duct tape. But you're doing it, and we appreciate your efforts and that of your teachers. Thanks so much for joining us on the Illinois Channel. We look forward to talking with you again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.